If you want to feel more connected to humanity and a little less alone, listen to Beautiful Anonymous. Each week, I take a phone call from one random anonymous human being. There's over 400 episodes in our back catalog. You get to feel connected to all these different people all over the world. Recent episodes include one where a lady survived a murder attempt by her own son. But then the week before that, we just talked about Star Trek. It can be anything. It's unpredictable. It's raw. It's real. Get Beautiful Anonymous wherever you listen to podcasts.
Kimberly. Now, we all know 2020 has been a wild ride with many unexpected twists and turns. Many of us may be left feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, and a little confused. As we approach the new year, we all need a little reset. That's why I created the Reset Button Bootcamp. It's a 3-day virtual conference for women like us that just need time to take a breath and get re-energized and refocused for the coming year. I provide you with practical tools and templates while guiding you through each step so you can regain your confidence and happiness. You will leave feeling like you have renewed energy and a solid game plan for the new year. If you're interested, head on over to my website at kimberlylovey.com/courses to grab your spot. Spaces are limited, so don't wait. Hello, and welcome back. This week, we speak with Jessie Shaked, a female entrepreneur and CEO of Step Forward, a collegiate apparel business. Jessie speaks with us about what it's like to learn a business from the inside out through trial and error, learning to scale a team, leadership styles, the importance of mentorship, and how she ultimately goes from a creative process to creating a product you can sell. She gives us helpful tips on being aware of outside forces that impact your business, navigating the unknown, and following those cues to know when you need to pivot your business. She also discusses how she balances being a mother with running a company. Jessie is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear her story. If you're a female entrepreneur or a working mother, this episode is definitely for you. Now let's dive in. Hi, Jessie. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I am super, super happy for you to be joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Could you just maybe talk a little bit about what your business has been that you've been working on?
Sure. I founded a company called Step Forward. It is a collegiate apparel company, very much targeted to the woman of today on campus. So whether that's students, parents, teachers, alumni, really bringing that ready-to-wear feel that we're more accustomed to seeing in a department store kind of environment to the modern day consumer through the collegiate lens. I came up with this idea when I was working in runway and in New York, and I, had not been out of college that long, and I just sort of remembered that there was really this gap in the marketplace. So didn't have very much experience, didn't have any experience in licensing. Really, my story about the experience that I kind of put together in garment manufacturing was truly the story of hard knocks and running after different manufacturing trucks that I would find in downtown LA, just really grassroots, just trying to figure out how to put something together.
Just so that we're really clear, you had quite the business. So you were manufacturing your own clothing. So this is not going on Instagram and being an influencer and, attaching your name to a piece of clothing or brand. You actually went through the steps of creating, first of all, revenue and clients, building relationships with different colleges, right? And then producing your own line. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Thank you. Everything from cut and sew to spinning and weaving my own fabrics to having a team of production managers and then the complicated aspect of, there were many complications with collegiate, but just from the production perspective, it had to be customized on the most basic level. So we would try to come up with these bodies that we felt like were really unique, but then we would have to Pantone dye them to be specific for Texas's orange color, or for Auburn specific navy color. Like in my sleep, I can still recite those Pantone colors. So just really having to figure out a way to marry that fashion perspective with what was vital to the collegiate branding system.
So I'm sitting here looking at you, and I'm just like blown away that you've been able to go from working for a business to just creating this business, which is a huge, huge business. To me, it feels like you had to have been overwhelmed as you started to dip your toes and see more of it. And then what was that like as you were learning?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, by the time today, I think about how I kept on taking one step in front of the other in this world, because it is definitely a path with a lot of obstacles, and I'm a diehard. I just kept on going over and going over the obstacles. But there is some sense to, when you start to see so many challenges line up in a specific direction, it's time to be agile. And I definitely look back, and not to be agile, but to sort of maybe rethink your process. I started doing sidelines for the Beverly Hills Housewives, and for the NFL draft, and for Nordstrom. And those were actually in the NHL, and those were so much simpler than the collegiate world. And so it was definitely along the way, when I was starting to run into all of these complications, I was just starting to take note of these time sucks that we would call them on my team. And it was just, at a certain point, we started dropping collegiate licenses, because we were just like, if there's too many regulations in your license, it's not possible for us to make a garment to fit all of make the garment that we are proud to make and fit all of your requirements. So there are definitely a lot of challenges, a lot of things that I've learned about being an entrepreneur, about picking your partners wisely. Mm-hmm. So when you're working on the licensing side and in branding, because that's what you're doing, you're really forging a relationship, not only with the person, but with the existing institution. And I think I used to think about that partnership more from a heritage perspective. Oh, I've heard of Ole Miss. Oh, I've heard of Arkansas. I've heard, by the way, I'm not a sports fan. So this isn't, it's not like I came by this information so naturally, the way that maybe some guys that are huddled around college football, games do. But anyways, so just, getting used to these big names. And as I got more familiar and more successful in the industry, I became attracted to those big names because they come with big contracts, they come with big dollars. But a lot of I would just say that I learned that wasn't enough to go on. I really had to get into the partnership that exists today. It's not really all about how it's been appreciated over the last 50 years. How is it run today? And if it's not really run in an effective way, if they're not really looking to diversify and to open up their women's branding and to cater to a more female audience, if that's not really a priority for them, it's hard to make that effort.
So you go in, you knock on the door, you somehow get meetings with the powers that be, the buyers of the school bookstore or the teams or the sororities themselves. And then if you do agree to make a contract, then you're producing swag basically for them, right? Like t-shirts, hats. Was it everything? Was it one thing? Did you expand? How did that all go down?
So I would definitely say a successful strategy for me, and something that I would really recommend to any entrepreneur. This is, I guess, specific to garment making, but I think it can be tailored to a lot of different perspectives, is we always made a point of staying in our lane. So we were a higher price point, ready to wear women's items. So we we actually didn't make a lot of money on t-shirts. I hated making t-shirts. It was just a very competitive space. You really had to justify your price point. A lot of these buyers, I'm not saying all of them, there are some very sophisticated buyers in the space, but many of them have sort of been there forever. And a t-shirt to them is just like any other t-shirt. So if they can buy a $5 t-shirt from someone else, what makes your t-shirt different? And I would struggle to explain to them, oh, well, this is something almost like how I would see a Splendid or a James Purse t-shirt. It's so, how could you compare? I mean, it's so different. But that just didn't translate. So then we started making like military shirts with embroidery that said, like University of Mississippi or whatever it was, with all these huge emblems on it. And those were, the differentiator that we needed. Nobody forgot those. Wow. So really just making a point of, we're different, we're owning it. I get that you sell t-shirts and that does well for you, but we're not going to be that vendor for you. And honestly, that's when things started to really click for us, when we stopped saying yes to everything. Also, keep in mind, we knew that we always had to be agile with the Pantone situation. So we already had a customization factor that we were constantly dealing with. So we couldn't also afford to add variability with our bodies and our product type. It was just too much. We had to call it something.
I love that you're talking about a theme that I've been kind of studying a lot lately, which is you can't be everything to everybody. And that it sounds like, and what I keep hearing and learning more about, and you're actually saying it now too, is that once you really niche down and find what it is that you offer, either whether that's a product or a service, who specifically you are serving and what specifically you're serving them. But at the same time, it sounds like you are also listening to your customers.
Once you feel good enough, and by the way, it's never going to be perfect. That I can tell you a million stories of me sitting on the floors of button houses and trying to reform a specific button for Henleys. I don't even want to talk about it, but you're never going to have something that's 100% perfect. But once you have something that you're proud to put out there, you got to put it out there and then listen to what comes back. So that is, and to me, learning that difference of, hey, you got to really pay attention to what people say once they've experienced your product versus constantly readapting your model before you've even ever put something out. Because then you're not even really giving yourself a chance, because everyone loves to give advice. But if you're going to listen to every single person and their advice to give, then, you got to pick certain philosophies. Okay, I saw that there was a gap for women. I went and I did all different kinds of data analysis, and I figured out that there really was actually, that's also a different story, but we were able to find a ton of data that showed us that that men's extra small was a critical size component for these collegiate bookstores. And then we were also able to find something that attached it to women were buying those. So basically showing that women were not buying the clothes that were on their side of the store, quote unquote. They were buying the men's extra small because they really couldn't find anything to wear. So anyways, so, you pick out some threads and you say, hey, I'm going to make something for women. I'm going to pick this price point. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then you come up with something that you want to make, and then you put it out there.
What was the turnaround time for that process and actually launching?
Okay, so first I made a sample set of the pieces. They were basics. That was my first line. I would really compare them to James Purse. I really liked that first line. It was probably one of my all-time favorites. All pigment dyed, really the pieces that I would like to wear. Many of them are t-shirts. I later went on to find out, the lessons that I shared with you, those weren't really an appreciated item, but just pieces that I really liked. Okay, so then I faced some of my first licensing challenges, and like I said, I didn't know anything. But I just went into NYU with basically a duffel bag and some line sheets that I had created. And I told them, that, I mean, when I say them, like the manager that was on the storefront level. And I told him that I wanted to sell items. And he was like, do you have the NYU license? It didn't even occur to me that I needed a license. I was just like, here I am.
Oh my God.
So yeah, then I had to go get licensed, and that was a crazy process. It led us to our first trade show. I started building up my team. At that point, one of my main team members really thought that we needed to just go all out. We hired somebody who was really great at Broadway play set design, and he built a beautiful booth for us. And we started attracting a lot of attention, and we started writing orders, a lot of orders. And we didn't even really have, we didn't have the license. We didn't hide that. We told people that we're a new brand, and at that time we were in queue. We were waiting to see if we were going to get approved. And
just to clarify that, the license, is it that it allows you to sell essentially
to
legally?
collegiate, yeah.
To collegiate. Okay, got it.
Right.
Okay.
And so we came into the market at a very odd time, but a lot of the collegiate brands had come in under like one of three umbrellas who were managing all of their licenses. And so we had to get license approved from them. And then the institution has the final say, but really it's a complicated relationship, but they've handed over a lot of rights to, it was IMG, Learfield, Fermata. Those were the three big ones. And so we had to get their blessing. Eventually we did. We went on to start producing items. Again, I'd never produced these kind of units. Up till then I was doing like some sample runs, like maybe 300, 500 pieces, but I was doing like hundreds of thousands of units after that. Wow. And all kinds of mistakes, like can't even tell you. I had like a beautiful line of shirts, pigment dyed, ocean blue, great color. They went in to get a print, and the print was laid on too hot, and it kind of pulled a red color from the blue. I'm not a dye expert, but that's what they told me. Anyways, the writing was like fuchsia pink.
Oh no.
All garbage. It was a mess. That was my first order that was supposed to be shipped out. So I can tell you just a lot of stories like that. Yeah, so that's kind of
wow. And so you're able to go in, you make these relationships, you figure out the product. How do you even get to the manufacturer? Like, how does one, like, I'm just so perplexed at how you could figure out how to navigate your way, having really no relationships in this industry at this point. How does one even identify the manufacturer? Like, how does that even happen?
Okay, so that is a great question, and I'm going to tell you that if I went backwards, I'm sure I would have gone to school. I highly recommend it for a lot of different reasons. I didn't. Right. So I just basically, it was like on the scene, I have arrived.
Oh my God, this is
I found a James Purse delivery truck. I keep on citing the name James Purse. No, because I was obsessed with his t-shirts at the time.
They make great shirts.
Yeah. So I find a James Purse delivery truck and start trailing them to, to downtown LA, but not like downtown LA, like a Staples Center is. Like, no. Downtown LA where like nobody goes. Like there's no addresses on the street. Like these are makeshift buildings at best.
God.
And I see that, one of these guys is taking in a whole, like tons of cartons of shirts, and I see that their style number, and oh my God, that's the sweatshirt that I really like. And so this guy must have made them. That was my first producer. Then he took me to a fabric house to find new fabric for my new waffle weave. Then when I was there, this guy who owned the knit house really took a liking to me, took a liking to my energy, was pretty impressed that I had just started out and I had managed to scaffold together enough orders to get some production going. And he turned me on to a bigger production house, which was really good because that first guy was very sketchy and was selling my patterns behind my back. So that wasn't good. And it was it was so many different things like that, but I never got to be in the production house of my dreams because it's one of those things, like there's always a better option. And the best production houses will give you complete transparency and insight into everything. So you can see what they're doing on a moment to moment level, how many sewing lines, how, where your fabric is at this point. I never got to really get my stuff into those kinds of houses, even though we were making hundreds of thousands of units.
Crazy.
So, but from where I started,
from chasing down the James purse truck, I think you did pretty good, right?
Yeah.
That's so funny. And so I'm looking at you and I'm like, okay, so here's the girl with the dream chasing down the James purse truck. And then all of a sudden she's got a team behind her, and the team enables her to really scale and start, taking in all kinds of orders and grow. How do you go from kind of being off on your own with your idea and kind of just doing your rudimentary research and ideas to bringing in a team? Like, how do you hire the team? And what is that experience like for you so early on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I found it to be, I found hiring or, partnering with people to be such an important lesson. You really have to get a taste of what that person will be doing. I'm a big believer in that. So even if you're hiring somebody to just build your website, you gotta really, educate yourself. What does it mean to build a website? Whether you're watching YouTube channels, what does it mean to hire a salesperson? So, you have to go to trade shows and literally watch salespeople interacting and think about how you want your salespeople treating your clients, what kind of follow-up you want. So you're never gonna have all the talents that you need to run a comprehensive business. Nobody's built like that. But you really need to put yourself in a position that you get a flavor for the kind of person that you want to hire, because there's all different types of people. No one is perfect, and there's not like a right or wrong, but you just hiring somebody without fully understanding their role, not fully, you're never going to fully understand their role, but not even getting a taste for their role, I feel like is almost disrespectful. So you really got to put yourself in through a learning curve before you hire somebody, in my experience.
I'm sitting here imagining you, because here you are, you're this young, beautiful CEO. What did you gain as far as being a leader? Like, what leadership skills did you acquire in this experience? And maybe some that anyone that's trying to scale their business can maybe start to think about focusing on and acquiring themselves.
Well, I would say you got to listen. At this point, I was getting used to working with a lot of people who considered themselves leaders. I mean, not considered, a lot of people who were leaders in their own right. And some people were good, some people were bad. So whether it was manufacturing house owners, or whether it was licensing institution officers, or, all these different people, I really was constantly in contact with different groups and different leadership styles. And I definitely noticed that a lot of people had a tendency to just talk down to their assistants and to just ignore problems. And I understand the need to ignore problems. I have come to respect that, because you can't answer all problems. The more people you hire, the more people you have coming to tell you there's a problem. So I get how that can kind of become easy to do, but you really have to be able to listen and to not get so caught up in your own to-do list. Be agile. You wake up in the morning thinking, these are the things I have to do. And you realize, like, all 17 things are just going to stress me out and not happen. So I'm just going to highlight the 3 things that I really need to do. And then the other 14 things, I'm just going to like kind of tick off as maybes or like suggestion points, because like, or else I would just end up with like this 78 item to-do list, 96. Like it wasn't helpful. So you really got to be specific. Like, what do I actually need to accomplish today? And
see, I think that's so important what you're talking about, because it's actually a couple things that you hit on that come together. It's like, I think when you start to scale a business and you're adding people to your crew, I think part of the exercise is the delegation and the letting go of the menial tasks. Mm-hmm. And so, that's assuming that you have the right people in place to go do their job, right? And that skill matching is a whole other exercise that you have to go through. But, once you really start to escalate as a leader and maybe relinquish control of maybe the more detailed tasks, it's almost like you have to take yourself out of the doing and start being more of like the sounding board and the orchestrator and the manager of all of it, because you can no longer go in, even though you know how. Probably you could probably even do it, who knows, maybe even better. But like, I just think that there is like this interesting shift where as you're scaling, you can push some work out. And then when you're sitting there, you have to prioritize like your time. You're only one person. So like,
yeah. Then, the other thing that I never really hear people talk about is there's always a budget, right? So sometimes you'll hire somebody really great for one task because you as the entrepreneur have decided this is a huge need. I need to have somebody that I can kind of just, tip my hat off and say like, you got this. I know you do. But maybe you spend a huge portion of your budget on that person, and 3 of the other tasks that you really need to get done are maybe going to be with somebody who's not necessarily an all-star. And you've got to be honest about that and say like, okay, maybe he or she didn't do something as much as to the extent that I would have done it personally, but I'm realistic. I didn't hire somebody with the budget that I would have ideally liked to. So, that's something that you just kind of have to be honest as an entrepreneur too. You're never going to have money to hire the best of the best of the best in every single thing.
Right.
You got to pick.
Absolutely. Yeah. What would you describe your leadership style to be? Like, I'm sure you had to kind of discover this through action.
My leadership style is that I am fully hands-on. I am not afraid to sit here and pack boxes with you, sort buttons, go through Excel sheets till the middle of the night. That's one of my favorite leadership qualities. If something needs to get done, and it's a fire sale or it's an emergency, I'm in it with you. I'm not just going to sit here and call you and be like, well, I guess you have to take care of that. All right, I'm going to the gym. No. Like, we're in this together. So I think that brings a huge level of motivation. What else would my leadership style be? I definitely am creative. So I like to... Yeah, so I'm just trying to, we launched a whole pop-up campaign, and, I was kind of trying to come up with this theme of what I wanted our fixturing to look like. And so my sales director and I went on, essentially like a driving shopping trip. And we were like, you know what? Let's take a notepad, let's take some pictures, and let's start writing some things down. And it was sort of a fun day. We had the time to do that. But, let some creativity kind of come to us naturally. So again, I just think being super involved, there's no task too small. Again, I cannot tell you how many boxes I personally shipped, how many boxes I, packed myself. I crinkled the paper, refolded it, polybagged it, barcoded it. And again, that goes back to when you hire somebody, you want them to know that I know exactly, I respect all the different levels in your position because I've done it. So I don't want you to think that you're going to be working for somebody who doesn't fully understand how labor intensive something is.
What do you do when you're in the situation that you do need to pivot? Something went really wrong. Like, how do you not panic, especially if you are, the CEO?
You have to pay attention to cues that are outside of your control, because I think that it's really easy to become very insular. What can I do differently? And I'm constantly seeing content like that, and I'm constantly hearing examples of people saying, well, I'm going to organize my office differently, or I'm going to set up different kind of telecommunication, or I'm going to ship items differently, et cetera. But you also got to pay attention to what's going on outside. So for us, we had a great B2B business, but things started to change. A lot of college stores were really having a hard time with Amazon. So, that was definitely a motivating factor for us to start our e-commerce business. Even though our B2B business was really good, you just kind of have to be attuned to what's going on. I think that's really important.
Wow. So you basically kind of pivoted in a huge way when you're going from B2B to all of a sudden, no, we need to start following, the way that things are going, which is clearly e-commerce. I mean, that must have been really scary. How did you make a pivot? Was that a hard decision? And it sounds like you're very well researched, but what was that experience like for you, completely shifting your business?
Yeah, so I think, I definitely think I was in a unique position, because I think a lot of people 5 years ago when they were starting a business, they were starting online. So many people, that was their entry point, right?
Right.
And we kind of did it backwards, but we felt very connected to this idea of college people who are traversing the campus stop into the local bookstore. So that's true to some respect. There were a lot of different challenges that came about when we decided to launch an e-commerce business. So I'm just thinking of a couple of them. One of them was not upsetting our B2B customers, right? So how did we do that? We started making unique products that we would only sell online. So we didn't want to be competing and hurting our wholesalers who we've done a lot of business with, our vendors who we've been doing a lot of business with, just different things. And we had to go through different avenues, and that added some complexity. So
it just is so amazing that you've had to overcome so many challenges. And as you're doing that, do you have a mentor, or who's your guiding light to keep your mind right, keep you positive, keep you focused?
So my dad for sure is my overall business mentor. He's been so successful and so wise in so many different businesses that he has gone through. However, he was never in the garment industry. This is an industry where, people grow up with it. And so I do feel like I missed out on not having a mentor, just going through all these stages. And again, there are a lot of people who saw the success I was having and they took an interest in me and I learned from them. But I didn't have a solid mentor that I could constantly come back to. Things just kind of kept on going at a faster pace. I think that that's really important. I really do. A mentor in the trade craft. So it's wonderful to have a mentor in the business sense, in the overall business sense, but it's really important to have somebody who understands your trade craft as well. My husband, Adam, is incredible with all different kinds of contract issues and just different kinds of operational procedures that we had to put in pretty fast because we were scaling up pretty fast. So
wow,
that was really, really important. And he really is my partner, not only in life, but in this business. So that has been really important. And my mom had a product business of her own 40 years ago. So she really did understand what it meant to really fall in love with an item and how connected you needed to really feel to it. though our experiences with manufacturing were extremely different. She started manufacturing in a local shop in Toronto, just outside of where she lived. I was going all around the world. I was manufacturing in Peru. I was manufacturing in Mexico. I was manufacturing in China. I was manufacturing. I had a domestic line. I mean, I was totally different. So.
Wow, that is crazy. And it is so interesting because I know your dad has definitely the entrepreneurial spirit, and I'm sure that is invaluable. So you're a working mom, and how on earth do you balance it all?
My experience with that has been, I think, once I became a mom and once Step Forward no longer became my only baby, right? I did realize that it's just a business. And the most important thing in this business is the people and your relationships. So you have to use your time to be enhancing the people and the relationships that you have in the business and making sure that you're bringing money to both, because that's what a healthy business is. So you need to be using your time effectively and efficiently. So in a lot of ways, I feel like I was more productive, just because it's like, this doesn't need to be a 45-minute meeting. This is a 15-minute meeting tops, and just being able to understand, like, I need to make my time effective right now. So if this isn't working, it's not working. But also knowing that, like, this is the time that I have blocked off to do something. So if this is my photo shoot day and it's not, whatever set that we're doing, I'm not getting the campaign imagery that I need, then, like, we can't do this again tomorrow. Like, something has to change, and it has to change right now.
I love that.
So just really having that lens and just, like, knowing that, like, I need to make this count. And I'm a creative naturally, so I totally appreciate looking at the back of a hang tag and thinking, where do I want my barcode to line up? What's going to make it look better? But then instead of just wondering about it, just say, okay, I'm going to give myself 3 options. It's going to be middle, left, right. I'm not even going to worry about, the height, and just say, like, that's it. I'm not thinking about it outside of that. That's enough. 3 options is enough for that decision. And then just do it. 1, 2, 3, and then pick one. And so.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you have to learn to be decisive and make big decisions. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I, work with or talk to, they talk about the number of decisions that they make in a given day is just exponentially bigger. And they're big decisions. I'm not talking about, should we plant this bush in my backyard? I mean, they're making major decisions, a lot of these business owners, on a daily basis. And you have to, like, it's like a muscle, that you have to develop to just say, okay, I don't have the time to sit here and belabor every decision. I have to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And I just love that you kind of had to force yourself to learn that as well and make a lot of hard decisions, it sounds like, as the boss. Mm-hmm. Do you have any resources that you love as far as personal growth tools that you would recommend to our listeners, or favorite books for any aspiring entrepreneurs or people that are scaling their businesses, or really just anything that's inspirational to you that you like?
That is a great question. Where I've been able to gain the most inspiration is honestly just going to, like, these places in downtown LA where, I know this is going to sound so crazy, but there are, like, these rag stores where literally all of the local downtown LA companies, whether it's like Kern Elliott, or they basically just, like, drop off all of their fabric, and you go in there and you think, oh my God, if there's going to be a fire, it's going to be here, because there's just rolls and rolls and rolls of fabric. But you just walk down these rows, and honestly, I would come up with some of my best designs that way, just seeing all of this discarded fabric. So I know that's not a book or something.
That's really cool, though. I love that you, like, know that that's part of your creative process, and the creative process can be different for anybody. So just to that particular experience for you. I think that's so interesting that that that's something that works for you. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, so what I would do is I would go to that place, and you can swatch anything you want. So literally the guy who owns it will give you rag finders, that's what it's called. Will give you scissors, and you just can swatch whatever you want. So I would go and I would get like big squares of things that I was thinking about. And then I would go to a mall or something, like highly trafficked area, pre-COVID, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I would put 5 or 6 squares down. And then I would just look and see what people were wearing. And if I could kind of subgroup a trend into some of the ideas that I had come up with, I felt like I hit on something. So when I decided I wanted to go forward with military jackets, I had, a few squares of fabric, and I was just looking and seeing what colors people were wearing, how green they were, what they were wearing it with. They were wearing it with jeans mostly, and I just started like piecing it together. So I think for me, I used to feel like divine inspiration had to come in this complete form where it's like, I all of a sudden know exactly what I want to create. I never had that. It was honestly, so if somebody does, that's wonderful. But for me, it was always more of a step-by-step. It was like, I really like these fabrics. I'm going to take them with me, and I'm going to see if I can come up with a garment type. Look at what everybody's wearing. This is so interesting. Well, do you think that we could put some branded, branding on that? I see a bunch of them have branding on them. Okay, so let's start to put them in this group. What kind of branding? Is it more embroidery? Is it screen print? Okay, well, I'm going to go look for some different kind of embroidery. Just kind of thinking about it in that layered process.
I think that is so important, what you just said. We want so badly to have clarity and be able to see the whole picture. When you're creating, like an entrepreneur, you are literally creating something out of nothing. It does not exist, and you are creating it. And that's what makes it such a crazy, amazing, profession, I'll say, or category. And the process when you're in it is not that you just all of a sudden see it. And this can be, by the way, for a product, a service, for anything. It's more of, you kind of are uncovering like as you go, and you have to be patient and get comfortable with knowing that you just need to kind of keep driving it forward. Like, take this little piece. Okay, maybe tomorrow we're going to pick up from what I learned today. And every day it's like moving the ball forward, and it starts to become clearer and come into focus as you allow yourself that time to develop and really vet the idea fully.
Yeah.
It's such a gnarly experience. And just to hear your process, like literally from the creative inception, is so interesting to me. And I think it's very validating for anyone that's kind of trying to build something. It's okay if you don't have the clarity yet, like keep going.
Yeah, 100%, cling on to the things that just move you, and it's inexplainable. You have no idea why, but you just seem to love brass hardware. I love it. I love when I see brass snaps. I love brass zippers. I like them more than gold. It's my opinion. I don't need to explain myself. But as a designer, it's important to take note of things like that and to not just let them go unseen, say like, wow, I'm really noticing that I am much more drawn to warm tones. Because you're always going to be able to create things that come naturally and create better things that come naturally to you.
Yeah,
I
love
take
that.
note of what inspires you.
All right, that is it for today. Now, as you know, some of our best conversations actually happen after the show. So I want you to find me on Instagram at Kimberly Lovey and let me know your thoughts about today's show. You can screenshot this episode and let us know what your biggest takeaway was and tag me at Kimberly Lovey, and we can share it on our stories. I will see you again, same time, same place next week.